5 missiles were detected heading toward the Soviet Union. The world had minutes left, and one man's decision determined whether we lived or die. September 26, 1983, 12:14 a.m. The night was silent inside the Serpukhov 15 early warning command bunker. Rows of computers hummed softly, and the massive radar monitors glowed with a faint red light. It was the kind of stillness that felt almost sacred, the quiet one prays for during the Cold War. At the center of the room sat Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, the officer on duty responsible for a task that no human being should ever carry alone. If the United States launched nuclear missiles toward the Soviet Union, he was the man who had to detect it, and he was the man who had to authorize retaliation. One wrong decision meant the end of the world. Petrov leaned back in his chair, exhausted. His head ached from long hours, his coffee had gone cold, and his thoughts drifted to his wife, who was fighting cancer at home. He wondered if she was sleeping peacefully or crying quietly, as she often did. Then suddenly, the entire bunker exploded with blinding red light. A siren wailed. A message flashed across the main screen in massive bold letters. Nuclear missile launch detected, United States. Every man in the room froze. No one breathed. No one spoke. Petrov felt his pulse hammering in his ears. His hands trembled slightly above the control panel. The computer system was designed to detect an attack instantly, an attack that would leave the Soviet Union only 6 minutes before impact. 6 minutes before cities vanished in fire. 6 minutes before millions died. If the alert was correct, Petrov had one duty: call the Kremlin and confirm nuclear launch. After that, Soviet missiles would be unleashed in return. There was no pause button, no second chance. His deputy stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Petrov swallowed hard. Something felt wrong. Why would the United States launch one missile? A real attack would involve hundreds, possibly thousands, fired at once. It didn't make sense militarily. His instincts screamed, "Wait, don't trust the machine." The bunker officers panicked around him, shouting data and requesting orders. The countdown timer glowed mercilessly on the screen. 5 minutes to impact. Then the alarm screamed again. Another warning appeared. Second missile detected. The room erupted. Men grabbed phones, others prepared documents to authorize immediate retaliation. Someone whispered, "This is it. God help us." 4 minutes left. Petrov's heart pounded. His throat tightened. He felt the weight of all humanity pressing down on his shoulders, billions of lives resting only on his judgment. One decision would determine whether the earth burned. Every protocol demanded he report it as an attack. But something inside him refused to believe it. He clenched his fists, forced himself to breathe, and made the most dangerous decision any military officer had ever made. This is a false alarm. His voice was calm, steady. Do not launch. Do not report it as an attack. We wait. The bunker went silent. No one moved. The world held its breath. Minutes passed. No explosion. No impact. No missiles. It had been a malfunction. Sunlight reflecting off clouds, misinterpreted by satellite sensors. Petrov saved the world by disobeying the system. He sat back, shaking uncontrollably. He had just prevented global nuclear war, and no one outside that bunker would ever know. The world slept peacefully, completely unaware of how close they had come to death. But for Petrov, the night was far from over. The bunker was silent, a silence so heavy it felt like the world itself had stopped turning. Men who were trained to never show fear now stood frozen, staring at Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov with disbelief. He had just done the unthinkable. He had refused to follow military protocol during what the system declared was a U.S. nuclear attack. And although minutes had passed and no missiles had struck, The danger was far from over. Petrov's commander stormed into the command center, face red with fury. "What have you done?" he shouted. "Why was this not reported immediately to the general staff? You were ordered to act." Petrov stood straight, though his legs trembled beneath his uniform. "If I was wrong," he said calmly, "we would already be dead." The commander's expression shifted. Confusion warred with anger. For a moment, he could only stare. Nobody in that bunker had expected to witness a man gamble the entire fate of humanity on instinct alone. But now came the consequences. Petrov was ordered to write a full incident report. Every detail, every decision, every hesitation. He sat at his desk, the pen shaking in his hand. Writing the truth felt like signing his own death sentence. In the Soviet system, disobedience was treason, and treason was paid for in blood. When the report was finished, it was delivered to the highest levels in Moscow. Petrov knew what came next. Interrogation, accusation, punishment. No medals, no applause, no gratitude. Hours later, he was escorted out of the bunker. As he walked through the steel corridors, soldiers watched him with mixed expressions: awe, shock, judgment. Some whispered, "He saved us." Others muttered, "He's a dead man." At home, his wife looked at him with exhausted eyes. "You're back early," she whispered. Petrov sank into a chair, his face pale. "I made a decision today," he said. "One that may cost me everything." For days, he waited for a knock at the door. The kind that came in the middle of the night, followed by hands pulling you away forever. He barely slept. Every sound outside made his heart jump. Meanwhile, the truth emerged inside the Kremlin. The satellite warning system had malfunctioned. Petrov had been right. But instead of celebration, the Soviet military felt humiliated. A single officer had questioned the infallibility of their billion-dollar system. His decision broke the chain of command, and proving his instincts correct only angered them more. They classified the entire incident. No one was allowed to speak of it. The world would never know how close it had come to nuclear fire. Petrov was neither imprisoned nor rewarded. Instead, he was quietly removed from his position, stripped of authority, and reassigned to a lower role. Eventually, he was forced into early retirement. For years, he lived in a small apartment, forgotten by the country he saved. He cared for his sick wife, struggling with poverty and isolation. Not a single official ever thanked him. The world moved forward. Presidents changed, borders shifted, the Soviet Union collapsed. And still no one knew his name. Until decades later, when a classified document was accidentally discovered during research on Cold War archives. Someone read the report and realized that in a bunker beneath Moscow, one man had refused to push the button that would have ended civilization. The world learned the truth. Stanislav Petrov saved billions of lives. Not by power, not by rank, but by courage. Yet even when the media finally asked him if he considered himself a hero, Petrov simply replied, "No, I was just the right person at the right time. I did what any human should do, but not everyone would have." And that is why humanity still exists. For more than a decade, the story of the man who prevented the end of the world remained buried deep inside classified Soviet archives. Stanislav Petrov lived in quiet obscurity, a forgotten figure walking through crowded streets where no one knew they owed him their lives. Years passed. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Files that once sat behind steel doors and red stamps marked top secret were gradually opened. Historians, journalists, and researchers began digging through thousands of documents, looking for anything that could explain how close the world had come to nuclear annihilation during the Cold War. And then one man found it. Colonel General Yuri Votintsev, the former commander of Soviet missile defense forces, was reviewing declassified records when he paused. His eyes narrowed as he read Petrov's emergency report, the night classified only as the false alarm incident. The document revealed everything. The warning sirens, the satellite signals showing 5 incoming missiles, the order to retaliate, and one man who refused. Votinsev knew instantly what the document meant. If Petrov had obeyed protocol, the Soviet Union would have launched a full nuclear counterattack, hitting U.S. cities within minutes. Washington would have responded. NATO would have responded. The world map would have changed forever, if anything survived at all. The general was stunned. He called a journalist and said quietly, "You do not understand. This man saved the world." And just like that, Petrov's name escaped into the light. At first, the news spread slowly, whispered through academic circles and defense forums. But soon newspapers around the world printed headlines like, "Unsung hero prevented nuclear war. How one officer saved mankind. The man who stopped the end of the world." Reporters searched for Petrov and eventually found him living in a modest apartment near Moscow. The camera crews expected a decorated military legend, someone who looked like a hero. Instead, they found an ordinary man, tired and humble, wearing an old sweater and slippers. "Is it true?" a journalist asked. "Did you stop a nuclear strike?" Petrov hesitated, eyes lowered. "I did my job," he said. "I simply refused to be the cause of a world war." Awards soon followed. From the United Nations, from international peace organizations, from governments around the world. He was invited to New York, Germany, London, and Japan. Audiences stood and applauded him with tears in their eyes. But Petrov always looked uncomfortable when people tried to praise him. At one ceremony, a reporter asked, "Do you consider yourself a hero?" He shook his head slowly. "No. I was just a man who did not want to see millions die. Anyone in my position should have done the same." Yet everyone knew the truth. Not everyone would have. Few people could withstand that pressure. Few could question a machine. Few could choose humanity over military duty. Petrov never became rich. He never lived in luxury. He never sought fame. When asked what reward he wanted, he simply whispered, "I just want to be remembered as someone who did something good." Even then, he rarely smiled. His wife had died years earlier, never knowing the world would one day speak her husband's name with gratitude. Petrov admitted that saving the world left him with more scars than honors. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "I wonder what would have happened if I was wrong. And then I realized there is no world where I could have chosen differently." In 2017, Stanislav Petrov passed away quietly at the age of 77. No crowds, no parades, just a small funeral in a small cemetery. But today, every person alive, every child playing outside, every family laughing at a dinner table, every sunrise, exists because one man chose peace. He didn't fire. He didn't panic. He didn't obey. He thought. And that single moment of human courage changed history forever.